South Korea-U.S. summit are taking a significant step up, with a series of meetings being held by the two sides all over the world. First, there are working-level talks at the inter-Korean border village of Panmunjom, where the agenda for the summit is being hashed out. Delegations from both sides are also in Singapore to discuss the logistics of the Trump-Kim meeting. And reports are coming in that one of Kim Jong-un's closest advisors is on his way to the U.S. to meet with senior Washington officials, most likely to address the most contentious issues, such as denuclearization. All this only days after President Donald Trump wrote that letter to Kim saying he was walking away from the summit. We'll be discussing this and more with an expert in the studio later, but first, let's head over to our news centre, where Devin Whiting has the latest news updates. Over to you, Devin.
Thanks, Jung-ho. We start at South Korea's presidential office and with a change coming for the country's workers. Starting in July, employees will see their maximum time on the job reduced by 16 hours a week. Today, in his cabinet meeting, President Moon explained more about the rationale for the shorter week and how it'll be implemented. Our Blue House correspondent Hwang Ho-jun reports.
A work week shortened from the current 68 hours to 52. That new limit will apply starting July 1st. And the president believes it will bring about positive changes in workers' daily lives.
OECD 국가의 연평균 노동시간보다 300시간 이상 더 많이 일해온 우리 노동자들이 장시간 노동과 과로에서 벗어나 가족과 더 많은 시간을 갖고 저녁이 있는 인간다운 삶을 누리는 계기가 될 것입니다.
At a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, President Moon said shorter working hours will be an opportunity for businesses to find creative ways to be more productive while also freeing up new jobs. He insisted that society will be able to handle the change, including the pay cut that will come with fewer hours and the extra burden on management. That's because the new regulations will be phased in, starting with companies with more than 300 employees. Regarding the recently approved $3.6 billion supplementary budget drawn up to create more jobs for young people and to boost the economy, the South Korean president urged the government to make sure that it's implemented without delay.
다소 늦어졌기 때문에 이제부터라도 청년들과 고용위기 지역 주민이 체감할 수 있도록 추경 사업들을 속도감 있게 진행하는 것이 무엇보다 중요할 것입니다.
Meanwhile, according to a Blue House press release, President Moon and his cabinet approved a bill passed by the legislature to appoint an independent counsel to investigate the political manipulation of online comments, the scandal named after a power blogger going by the handle Drew King. He allegedly rigged the internet comments to sway public opinion, while ruling party officials, including former lawmaker Kim Jong-soo, are said to have covertly endorsed his campaign. Kim has denied the allegations. And the National Assembly passed the act last week. For the past few weeks, President Moon, along with the rest of the world, have been on a diplomatic roller coaster as North Korea and the U.S. go back and forth over their summit plans. But the president's meeting with his cabinet shows the administration is determined not to overlook pressing issues at home. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, as North Korea and the U.S. work to set up their summit next month, tentatively set for June 12th in Singapore, officials from both sides are said to now be in the city-state for talks on the practicalities of the summit, things like protocol and logistics. Our Lee Ji-won has the latest.
Delegations from North Korea and the U.S. have reportedly arrived in Singapore for working-level talks ahead of a possible summit next month between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. An 8-member delegation from the North led by Kim Chang-son, the regime's State Affairs Commission Secretariat, and a top logistics and protocol official is said to have landed in Singapore late Monday local time, according to local sources. The U.S. team, consisting of some 30 officials from the White House and State Department, led by Deputy White House Chief of Staff Joe Hagan, arrived in the Southeast Asian city-state earlier that day. Although the exact time of the meeting has not been disclosed, the two sides are expected to meet as early as Tuesday to discuss logistics, protocols, and specific venues and itineraries for the two leaders. This comes as the former U.S. ambassador to South Korea and former nuclear negotiator Sung Kim and North Korea's Choi Sun-hee, the regime's vice foreign minister, and a former director of her ministry's North American department are expected to resume their meeting at the inter-Korean border village of Panmunjom on Tuesday. Starting Sunday, the two sides have been committed to the talks, but it's known they did not meet on Monday and instead had meetings among themselves, according to foreign affairs sources. As both diplomats are experts in their fields, it's expected they'll discuss the agenda and details of the Pyongyang-Washington summit. On a separate but complementary track, the Associated Press is reporting that a CIA team, assumed as the CIA Korea Mission Center, is meeting with its North Korean counterpart, known as the United Front Department, headed by the regime's vice chairman of its Workers' Party, Yong-chol. The report says the third track is to complement the working-level talks being held at Panmunjom. 이지원, Arirang News.
And yet more secretive meetings ahead of the summit. While Kim Yong-chol's team meets with its American counterparts, Kim himself appears to be bound for the U.S. He reportedly arrived in Beijing Tuesday morning. According to South Korea's Yonhap News, Kim's name is on the list of people taking a flight to New York on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Kim has met several times with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in his previous role as CIA director, and he's expected to do the same this time as well. Also in Beijing with Kim was the Deputy Chief of North American Affairs at Pyongyang's Foreign Ministry, Che Kang-il. Citing an unnamed official, Yonhap News also reported that Kim is expected to meet with Chinese officials on Tuesday before his departure the next day. Now, a sign the U.S. is trying to improve ties with the North ahead of the summit. Washington has reportedly decided not to impose new sanctions on the regime just yet, measures that had been prepared in response to the North's recent angry rhetoric. Oh Soo-young reports.
The Trump administration has decided to hold off on additional sanctions against North Korea. Citing U.S. government officials, the Wall Street Journal reported Monday that Washington will indefinitely shelve the planned extra measures against the North, while the two sides hold talks to prepare for their upcoming summit. The report says officials had been ready to unveil the additional measures as early as Tuesday, targeting further sources of income for the cash-starved Kim Jong-un regime. The sanctions are believed to have included expelling North Korean laborers from foreign countries, as well as targeting Russian and Chinese entities with ties to the regime. Such measures were being prepared in response to the recent aggressive rhetoric from Pyongyang officials, which caused the U.S. leader to call off the summit. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the policy of maximum pressure against North Korea would continue in order to squeeze its economy. Washington's most recent round of sanctions in February targeted the North's illegal maritime trade and a global network of businesses that generate cash for the regime. However, with summit preparations between the two sides seemingly back on track, it seems Washington is aiming to maintain the progress on repairing their relations. In recent weeks, top officials have promised Pyongyang economic prosperity and U.S. private investment should it fully denuclearize. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The North, meanwhile, is once again demanding that South Korea and the U.S. suspend their joint military drills, with another exercise coming up this summer. An editorial in the Tuesday edition of the state-run Nodong Shinmun newspaper said that the Ulji Freedom Guardian exercise, a computerized drill scheduled by the Allies for August, does more harm than good. It also said that if the U.S. is sincere about holding next month's summit, then the exercise should not go ahead. Following the report, the spokesperson for South Korea's defense ministry told reporters in a regular briefing that the military plans on conducting the drills as scheduled. The Allies held another drill 2 weeks ago called Max Thunder, which the North also criticized. I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines for this hour.
As reported earlier, working-level talks between North Korea and the U.S. have been taking place in Panmunjom over the last few days. Watchers say that the officials that have been called up to carry out the talks show that both sides are serious about making the negotiations a success. Kim Hyo-sun tells us more about the delegations.
The U.S. has expressed its strong intent to make its negotiations with North Korea a success, with its veteran diplomat and expert on the North, Sung Kim, leading preparations for a historic meeting between the leaders of the two countries. Sung Kim, U.S. ambassador to the Philippines, served as Washington's special envoy to the six-party talks from 2008 to 2011, and also as the U.S. ambassador to South Korea from 2011. He returned to a more direct role in negotiations as U.S. Special Representative for North Korea policy in 2014.
But at the same time, we will coordinate with our five-party partners to look for an opportunity to resume credible, meaningful, serious negotiations on the nuclear issue.
Sung Kim was selected to lead negotiations with the North at such a crucial time, despite the fact he served under the Obama administration. Pundits say it reflects President Trump's strong determination to make the negotiations a success. Sung Kim's North Korean counterpart at the working-level talks is the regime's Vice Foreign Minister, Choi Sun-hee. She has years of experience and is well connected within the North Korean hierarchy. Choi, the daughter of a former premier, joined the foreign ministry in mid-1980s and served as an English interpreter. During the past several years, she was a spokesperson for the North Korean regime through her various meetings with U.S. experts in Europe and Southeast Asia.
If the right conditions are made, we will sit down with the Trump administration for talks.
Choi Kang-il, who's in charge of North American affairs in the North, is also part of the North's delegation. He reportedly made contact with U.S. officials in February while visiting South Korea for the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. With the years of experience on both sides, there is hope they can thresh out a way to make the Singapore summit happen as planned on June 12th. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, to try and sort out all these diplomatic meetings ahead of the North Korea-U.S. summit, we have with us Dr. Jung Dae-jin, a research fellow at the Aju Institute of Unification. Dr. Jung, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Now, there are many talks going on at the moment, but let's start with that one in the last report. The U.S. and North Korean delegations being led by Sung Kim and Choi Sun-hee. They're meeting in Panmunjom for the second round of talks today, it's believed. They're obviously going to talk about the upcoming summit and the potential deal for a North Korean denuclearization. But can you talk us through some of the issues that they might tackle today? And what are the two sides' main point of conflict?
Yeah, the problem is that the main issue would be the Trump model. There is no clear evidence or no clear information about the Trump model. But I think that North Korea has fully understand some certain conditions of Trump model because Vice Minister Kim Kye-gon released his statement that he hoped the Trump model will be the resolve for the stalled North Korea, U.S. and NK relations. But the problem will be that I think that the time gap will be the main differences between North Korea and U.S. recognition. Because there is a time gap of denuclearization and compensation. If North Korea abandons its nuclear warhead or deport its nuclear warhead to America, and it will be implemented add-ons. But the compensation for that action will take a longer time. Yeah. If North Korea abandon A, if North Korea abandon A, U.S. abandon B, that may be the North Korea's argument. North Korea has placed and has utilized that step-by-step approach in the past. They utilized that step-by-step approach as a bargaining chip and halt the negotiation in some times, and that is the routine course of in the past negotiations. But the Ambassador Sung Kim was the victim of that negotiations, so I believe he is a very bold approach of that negotiations skills of North Korea, and he'll be maybe bold at this time. Yeah.
So you're thinking they still want to try and look for that big deal, as some people call it, rather than a step-by-step approach? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I believe North Korea would still argue the step-by-step approach, but U.S. wanted a package deal to clinch a deal add-ons. Yeah, and they will talk about the level of some agreement, which if the upcoming June 12 summit will be held, the word and meaning of the level of the agreement, they will talk about that seriously.
So another meeting that is potentially happening right now is between the delegates that from the two sides that are in Singapore, reportedly. Seems to be mostly on the logistics of the actual summit itself. But what are the key points there? What do you think they'll be discussing in Singapore?
There are three main points if some countries have summits. The first one is agenda, the second one is a protocol, and the third one is security. The agenda meeting is still underway in Panmunjom, and the Singapore meeting will focus on the protocol and security. The delegations of North Korea, Mr. Kim Chang-sun, Director Kim, has served for a long time as a steward for Kim, the former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il and incumbent chairman Kim Jong-un for a long time. And then Mr. Hagen, the deputy chief of staff of the White House, Mr. Hagen, has also served for a long time for two former presidents, George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush. He also has a very top-notch protocol officers. Top-notch protocol officers from both sides is meeting in Singapore, and they will focus on the security and protocol. So.
There are now reports that Kim Yong-chol, the vice chairman of North Korea's ruling Workers' Party Central Committee, or simply put, Kim Jong-un's right-hand man, as some have called him, has been spotted in Beijing now, and he's suspected to be on his way to the U.S., probably to hold talks with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Now, what would these two talk about that aren't being talked about in the other meetings, on the other lower-level meetings, such as the one in Panmunjom and in Singapore?
Yeah, report has it that Mr. Kim has arrived in Beijing today, this afternoon, and originally he has a plan. He has a flight plan to go to U.S. directly, but he changed his flight schedule. He postponed his flight to tomorrow. I think he may be waiting for the result of the this ongoing Panmunjom meetings result, and he will prepare some materials or agendas to talk with his counterpart, Secretary Pompeo. There are three levels in the diplomatic negotiations. There's a working level, and second is a higher level, and the last one is summit. This is a Kim Yong-chol Pompeo line is the high level, and the Panmunjom is a working level negotiations. There will be some result and released today, this afternoon, or early tomorrow morning, and Kim Yong-chol will analyze the result, and then he will bring the result to the United States and talk with his counterpart to arrange some remaining issues. Working level officials may left some remaining issues. They cannot decide some issues, and that will be the remaining issues. The remaining issues will be solved and reported to the higher level, and the higher level officials like Kim Yong-chol and Pompeo will report to their each boss and the respective boss, and then they will talk about the last minute changes or to clinch a deal.
Can we talk a bit more about that? For example, there's the denuclearization deal. Can they make a decision about what the denuclearization is going to look like, especially for North Korea, where it seems like Kim Jong-un has so much control over what he wants and what kind of how he runs his regime?
Yeah, Kim Jong-un. There are many think that there are some hookish involved in the North Korea, but I think there is only Kim Jong-un to make decisions for that problem. And then so Kim Jong-un and the Kim Yong-chol line is to report to his boss and then to decide some remaining issues and then talk to the Mr. Pompeo, and then Mr. Pompeo report to the President Trump, and then Trump will have some answers through Pompeo, and then the upcoming Kim Yong-chol and Pompeo meeting will be the key to clinch a deal, for the upcoming summit.
So the next meeting in line, it seems to be this Friday. The two Koreas will restart their own talks after the high-level meeting previously was cancelled last minute. Now, what are the inter-Korean issues that they'll be likely to discuss this time?
Just a couple of minutes ago, our government released the list of delegations for the upcoming inter-Korean delegations. There are two points to be. We have to eye two persons. And the first person is the Vice Minister No. He is in charge of the Vice Minister for Culture, Sports and Tourism. Vice Minister No is in charge of the sports bureau. Maybe it is the card to discuss with North Korea to have a sports exchange in some time, and the Vice Minister for Land Infrastructure and Transport, Jo, he is in charge of Kim. He is in charge of transport, and the Panmunjom Declaration has a agreement on the link between inter-Korean railways and road, and he will talk about the initial steps, how two Koreas begin that infrastructure build-up, and then more importantly, the UN sanction resolution 2371 and 2375 admit the exception of the infrastructure investment to the North Korea. So the sports exchange and then infrastructure investment can be the key and the easy way to begin the store the North Korea, store the inter-Korean relations.
Do you think the two Koreas will discuss about the US talks at all, the US summit, or do you think they will just leave that to the US and North Korea to talk amongst themselves?
Yes, US talks, North Korea's US talks and North Korea talks is a separate one. RAG and US is an alliance, and then the RAG and US alliance should play some divided role and share the role. The inter-Korean relations is our own main agenda, and we can kick off some inter-Korean project just shortly and then directly. But denuclearization is the main agenda of the North Korean US agenda. Maybe, but RAG-US and South Korea and North Korea as already there's a trilateral relations, and then they can share the problems and they can share the information about the denuclearization. But the main part or some subject to clinch a deal of the denuclearization should be the first authority will be under the hand of the U.S. and North Korea denuclearization. Regarding the denuclearization, we should divide the role and play the role and synergize the effect.
So briefly, before we go, discussions on separated family reunions are also expected at these inter-Korean talks. The South would like them to happen, obviously, but the North is still demanding the repatriation of some North Korean restaurant workers, which Pyongyang argues they did not defect voluntarily. Do you think this issue can be resolved for the separated reunions to happen again?
Yeah, if North Korea demands the repatriation of that workers, the negotiations will be very difficult, and it could be stalled. But I don't believe at this point Pyongyang would argue that the difficulty would argue or raise that difficult issues at this point, and their main goal at this point is to the successful U.S. North Korea's upcoming summit. It's the main key and main goal of their of North Korea. So I believe they don't raise the cash. They don't raise that. Yeah.
I guess one step at a time.
Yeah.
We're out of time, Doctor. But thank you for coming in today and sharing your insights with us.
Okay, thank you.
Now that's our show for now, but do stay tuned to Arirang throughout the day for the latest news updates from Korea and the rest of the world. Thank you for watching and hope you can join us again next time. Goodbye.
It began from a nation where the sun rises in the east.